So basically, I will talk about API first design. Don't care about the title. This is like generated title. My name is Rubem Mota. No, that is not a typo. My name is written in this way because of the stubbornness on the public services. And they don't want to change this. I already tried several times. About me, in the past 3 years, I'm acting more as a technical lead in some projects for xgeeks. But besides this, I like to say that I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Because working in small teams, I had to do DevOps, front-end, back-end, and design sometimes. Poor me. I'm working on xgeeks since 2022. That is not the famous code now, because on the last presentation, I did something like lack of coincidence, and someone took that code and now is associated to me inside the company. My bad. If you see or if you capture something like that in the end of this meeting, please give me that code. I want to create a record of those codes. I will try to split this presentation in 3 parts. One is the scenario. The second one, it will be code first versus API design first. And the end, an open round to everyone, give your feedback, your experience with those approaches. But before going to the use case, who had already heard the term design first, API design first? Bring some beers to those guys, please. Code first. It's the most common one, the most ancient one. Who is the backend? Just 2. Okay, better. And the front end? You too. You do everything. Is jack of all trades, master of none? That's good. So for our use case, we have an API that manages xgeeks events. And for some reason, our product owner decided to add a new endpoint that will fetch every event for a given city. And to accomplish this implementation, our team will have a back-end developer, a front-end developer, and a QA tester, hopefully. And this will bring my first question for you. In your cases, if I presented this to you, which will be your approach to take this challenge to implement a new feature? Which will be the first step? We are going directly doing code, or we will try to decide what we want to provide to every team? Who does the first approach? Directly to code on the back end, and the front end guys will wait until the back end is done. Some smiley faces that already did that. I did this several times during several years, okay? Don't worry. And taking this in perspective, let's try a little bit code first. The most common way of implementing this on small teams. What is the normal behavior on a development team when we have this kind of features? We receive the feature, the backend will start doing the endpoint, doing the logic to manage databases, and so on, so on, so on. We'll proceed with the full development process, review, deploy, and there starts the problem. I've deployed my endpoint, and I will start to say to my front-end guys, you can start implement my endpoint. It's the best thing on the world. Perfect. The perfect solution for our cases. And the other side, the front end starts to look to the endpoint and does like, that don't gonna work. And this happens a lot with the code-first implementations. Why? The teams are not working as a team. Every developer is working like a solo team development. And something that could take like 2, 3, 4 days to be fully implemented could take 20 days. Why? Goes to the deploy, I'm talking to the front-end guy. The front-end guy says, yeah, that will not work for me. I need you to change the payload. I need to change the request because on my front-end I can't handle that kind of information. What you want to do? And the back-end will start to say, I don't care. Front-end is yours. I don't care about that. And we start to debating inside the team like, who will fix this, who will not fix this, and the end date is coming, and passing 1 week, we are still debating who is the responsible to fix this. And to try to avoid this kind of situations, and this approach brings another problem. If we look into this diagram, this is sequential work. We will have most of the team waiting for the backend or doing another stuff that possible must be stopped to implement this. And in terms of planning, this is the worst nightmare for Scrum Masters and the technical leads of the teams. Because we will start to raise the question when that is done. And from backend, we'll say in 1 day. From front end, they will say it depends on backend. And this don't work. And this, I like to joke a little with this, and this seems like the Portuguese way of assembly furniture from IKEA. First, we purchase the furniture, we try to assemble that, and in one step, we will start to think, I think that I forgot something because this is not stable. Let me go to the manual to see the steps that I need to do. And this is a real case. It's good, it's bad, it depends. But with the API design first, and there is 2 terms associated with API design first. One is API first, the other one is API design first. They are complementary. Basically, the API design first is like a sub-part of the API first, where the API first wants to gather everyone, including the stakeholders, the business stakeholders, on the decision of a given implementation. But like we know, sometimes the stakeholders don't know anything regarding implementation. They only want something to be working, and they don't give about if it's a post or a get to get something. While the API design first is more targeted to the developers itself. Inside this approach, we can divide, and this is not very strictly, this is like my vision in some points of the design first. We can divide the design first in 4 grand areas. The planning area, where we gather everyone to decide what I want to do. This is possible to do by everyone. And by everyone can be our QA tester from the scenario, our front end, our back end, or even an external team that will integrate this with a desktop application or a mobile application. The API development environment, this is basically the tools that we want to use. Not code itself. We will not do code at this point, but we will define that for each team, you will use these tools to do the work that we need. Integrated development environment, the favorite part of everyone. Code. I like to code. We like to code. I don't care about business. I want to code. Final, integration. This part is where we will run the final tests and we will deploy our application to staging, QA, UAT, production, and so on. On the plan phase, like I was saying, we want to gather everyone. front end, back end, QA, mobile, etc., etc. What is the output that we want for this phase? We want to have a final spec of the endpoint with payloads, requests, authentication or not, what will be the format, which will be the method that I will use for that. And don't forget errors, because sometimes we define endpoints and we forget to define which kind of errors can come from that endpoint. But this is the main point. Okay, this could lead to a possible drawback in the development phase. This is an overhead for our developer team. We will need to stop our team during 1 hour, 2 hours, or maybe 1 day to define what we want to deliver. But in the future, we will have the security to say that I need to take 2 weeks to do something, and I will do that in 2 weeks, full team. And like I was saying, in the end, we'll have something like that spec file that is an open API spec file. Anyone has worked with this already? Bring another beer. And we can take on this spec file to generate something. And that something, it's the tools that will be generated in the API development phase. On this phase, we can generate mock servers, SDKs, clients to be used by the front ends or by the QAs. We can design in terms of implementation for the backend, what we want to do inside, behind the shadows for this endpoint. The QA team or the QA tester can already start preparing his work for our new endpoint. And in this phase, we can already see a good winning point for this approach. Our team we will work as a parallel. No one is waiting for no one. Everyone can start working on their features for this endpoint. The front end can already start thinking or start gathering the information to the next phase, prepare the front end while the back end is still working, and no one is waiting for no one. Final, integrated development environment, code. The part that we like a lot, code. In this phase, for instance, for the front end or the QA, we already created the needed clients for them. They are already using our client, they are already using a possible representation of the final product that we want to deliver. In this phase, we can run tests, integrated tests, unit tests, etc., etc. And for the back end, we are already implementing the new endpoint, and everyone is happy because everyone is doing development work, and everyone is doing what they want, that is not documentation, because no one likes to do documentation. Finally, we go to the integration part, where the code reviews happens, where the final documentation is delivered, where our application will be deployed to the needed environments. And thankfully, work done in terms of a new implementation. There is one aspect that sometimes some developers become confused. We have some frameworks that we can add the documentation to the endpoints that will generate in the end an open API spec file. Maybe you already saw that, like in SJS and others. That is not API first, okay? That was generated by code first, that eventually can generate clients for the front end and back end. But we will have the same problem. We decided to do everything on the back end without talking with the rest of the team. And we will enter, possible, on a refactor nightmare. And maybe you are starting to wondering, whoa, that is the best thing in the world. It depends, okay? This is a solution that works? Yes. It's for every case? No. Let's say that we have a small team, 1 developer, 2 developers, that we need to deliver a POC in 2 weeks. Don't go with API first. The initial overhead to start defining stuff, we will delay your delivery. And that's not something that you want. But you are in a huge project with several APIs that you need to have the full security that you can maintain that during 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Go with the API first, okay? Where is common to see the code first? Small teams, like I was saying, non-agile teams, and I will give you one example. For instance, small team, the boss comes to you and say, I need a new endpoint for tomorrow. Are you able to deliver that? And the developer starts to think, not really, but you need to deliver. Code first, okay? Sequential work is one of the biggest drawbacks because if we have a big team that is waiting for one solo developer, we will delay everything, and that is not something that we want. This works, again, small projects, POCs, small teams. In theory, the guys that like to do code first says that this is shorter in time to deliver. That works for POCs. That don't work for big projects. Lack of documentation. We are developers. We know that sometimes we don't like to do documentation because it's a job that no one likes to do. It's boring. But for the next guy that came to take this project, he will appreciate to have documentation. API first. Bigger teams, agile teams that we can plan work in 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months. We can have parallel work. We can have every member of the team working for the same thing, but one for QA, another for front end, and another one for back end. Encourage ownership. And why this is important? Most of the times in small teams, we are a little like, give me a task, I will deliver you a task. And we don't provide the needed feedback or input as developers. With this, since every team must agree with something, every team must provide some kind of input to this decision. Enforce project documentation, because planning phase, we need to document everything and why we want to do something like that. Again, agreement between teams. Biggest drawback, initial overhead of development, because we need to spend more time before starting code. There is another drawback, that is the mind shift change. And I had this experience on my previous project. We had a team of 30 developers that are used to work with code first, and we decided to change to API first, and most of the complaints that we got was, but I don't know what I want to deliver before doing the code. And this could be a huge drawback, and this needs to be cultivated inside the team to start everyone thinking about, I want to plan first, do after, and not do first and plan after when something goes wrong. And basically, this was what I wanted to present to you today, okay?
So thank you everyone, thank you for coming. So hope to join us to the next meetup. So